So this is the most requested smartphone in a while. It's in the comments section. I'm publishing videos. People are like, Lou, where is the K20 Pro, the Redmi K20 Pro? People telling me it's the next Pocophone. It's kind of crazy, actually. When you look at the spec list and then you look at the price, Snapdragon 855, top tier chipset, 4,000 milliamp hour battery, full screen display, AMOLED, pop-up camera. You're like, okay, I hear you, I hear you. This thing, when you do the conversion, the starting price, $360. Now, quickly, I should tell you, available in China first, India next. So keep that in mind. If you're in North America, you may have to import this thing. But that's a crazy spec list when converted to the North American price, as far as I'm concerned. Now, my version is the top spec version, which is a few more dollars than $360. As you can see on the side, this one is 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage. Starts at 6 gigs RAM, smaller storage, and that's what you get for the $360 USD. We have a case as well to get you up and running. It's a pretty simple, I guess it's a little nicer than simple. Sometimes you just get that like plasticky clear case, the TPU case. This one is thinner, so I'd be more likely to use that than the typical freebie case that you get. Really crazy pattern on it. Look at that. I mean, that's the first time we've seen that. That's like some Game of Thrones thing, right, Will? That's Targaryen. So what will he do? He's the in-house Game of Thrones expert, and he claims this is inspired by Game of Thrones. When it comes to differentiation, it's not enough to just be a color now. You gotta have color shifts and crazy sandblasting going on, and this is just the latest version of it. This gives you a look at the camera module as well. You have a 48 megapixel camera in there, same sensor, Sony sensor, same sensor as the OnePlus 7 Pro, and then a couple of other modules, including an ultra-wide, which that's a must for me. Something that the OnePlus 7 Pro doesn't have, a headphone jack still on the device, and this also gives you a glance at the pop-up camera. That's because it's a full display, AMOLED, and this is motorized. It's gonna pop up. Bottom of the device gives you your SIM tray as well as your USB Type-C connector, and it's quick charge as well. I believe it's 27 watts. I think I looked it up. 27 watt quick charge. Okay, very nice to have. Let's go ahead and see if it has any power. Okay, so as I mentioned, Xiaomi device, so MIUI 10 pre-installed. We should do a quick comparison actually with the OnePlus 7 Pro. All right, so both AMOLED, that's the main thing. That's kind of what you're looking for. Of course, that gives you the rich tones and the dark blacks. I should also mention on the OnePlus, around the edge, the glass curves. You don't get that on the K20 Pro. But these two devices, even though the specs are quite similar, the price is not. Now, as I mentioned before, it's running MIUI, so for me, that's a bit foreign. That's not my typical operating system. I'm more of a stock Android or close to stock Android guy. And since I've been using the 7 Pro, it's been crazy quick. There's almost no animation in there. In fact, you can turn it off completely, but just by default, it's hardly there. So I'm probably not going to be an immediate fan of this UI comparatively, but it does feel relatively snappy at the moment. And let's check out the pop-up camera. Pop-up camera. So that's a lot for your money. It's actually kind of insane that that set of features has now trickled down to that price point. This is just common now. All right, let's try a selfie while we're here. And, ooh, okay. We are fully in beard hair territory. Lots of contrast, which is what I look for, as well as not blowing out the brightness on the cheek here. Another thing that I'm looking for with a front-facing camera. That said, look how black the black is. It blends right into the unused portion of the display, the black of my shirt. I'm gonna try HDR on this one, auto. So it's obviously very hot once again, and there's not much you can do about it. This is a very bright environment to shoot photos in, but the detail is there, man. The beard hairs are there, and again, this is kind of wild that we're talking about anything comparable to a flagship type of performance in something that's nowhere near that price point, starting at $360. All right, let's try the rear camera. So this is at 1x, no HDR. 2x, no HDR. Ultra wide, ooh, I gotta get my hand out of the way. So that's 0.6 ultra wide. That rounds out your 3 different options. So this being the widest, as you can see, that's an incredible frame. I think it should be sufficient for what most people are looking for when they take a wide shot. And as I move through, that's your zoom. That's pretty nice, actually, quite detailed. is only a 2x zoom, so keep that in mind. Nothing, no crazy reach, no hybrid, no 10x like the Oppo device I featured recently or anything like the P30 Pro. Standard out the gate. There's your zoom. There's your ultra wide. Triple camera setup. Unbelievable. 360 bucks. Next up, let's give the speakers a quick check. That's a must. Let's try some Lou later first. The titles that were going to be available on Stadia, for those of you that haven't been following along, this of course is Google's new gaming service. Yesterday's show, we speculated on what Google was going to say today, particularly in relationship to price expected for Stadia. And it turns out the pricing is a bit more complicated than we had imagined. So I would say volume is similar. The K20 Pro may cut through a little more, but Jack just mentioned it could also be perceived as tinier. I also hear more low, mid-low, low-end kind of frequency in the OnePlus device, but honestly, I'd say they're kind of comparable. Neither of them sound amazing. My takeaway, like considering the price differences, to each their own. I mean, you guys heard it. I guess you can kind of try to decide for yourself, but like, it's not a big difference. 3 different price points represented, and I'm like, man, the audio is very close. Okay, so let's go ahead and test out the in-screen fingerprint reader real quick here. So it works like those other optical image-based fingerprint scanners. Rotate your finger around, you try to get the scan in. Now let's go ahead and test that out. All right, it's about the same. It's fast enough. I don't mind the look of the animation there. I turned it off on this device, on the 7 Pro. I just turned it off, so it just takes me straight in. Little race here. 3, 2, 1. You can see it feels faster on the OnePlus. But here's the thing, I keep referencing and comparing this device to the OnePlus device like as if they are completely targeted at one another. And while they are, they're obviously different price points. You could almost get 2 of these. That's a lot of value. It's a ton of value. This has so many elements from a hardware perspective that make the OnePlus 7 Pro special. They're sitting in here at a much lower price point. If you can look past the skin, which might not be to your taste, at least for me in the North American market, I'm sure people in China are completely used to MIUI and they're happy with it and they're going to use this and so forth. But me, I like to have the app drawer. Yeah, I like to have something closer to a stock Android experience. It's just more where my head is at. But if you think about this from the standpoint of like, okay, I'm going to put my own launcher on anyways, now it becomes hard to justify spending the extra cash on the OnePlus. I get it. It's a bigger display. The fit and finish is probably a step above with the curved glass going around the edge. The brand name here in this market specifically. But then you make the argument towards this one where you're like, you know, maybe you want a slightly smaller form factor. Maybe you want to have a headphone jack. And all of a sudden you're like, both have the same chipset, both have the same battery inside. It's like becomes a difficult choice to make, especially price considered. So 360 bucks. Of course, this is just an unboxing video. You know, I'm just looking at this thing for the first time. I'm just popping off the cameras for the first time. For me, the finish being glossy, I mean, that's going to be up to your own individual taste. I'm starting to feel like this might be the value champion. I'm starting to feel like this is going to be tough to beat. I just keep referencing that price. I feel like people in North America, we don't get enough exposure to this type of value. It's hard to imagine that in other parts of the world, people are getting all this for that money. It's like a whole different spectrum of discussion when you get into the price conversation. And that's what happened with the Pocophone last time around. Is it was like, man, we need to adjust our perspectives on how we're evaluating this stuff, because it's no longer just, hey, does it have the spec list I'm looking for? It's also, how does it match up price-wise? Because so many things have the spec list you're looking for now, this one included. So for me, for the time being, my SIM is going to stay in the OnePlus 7 Pro. I'm not finished with it yet. I want to use it a little bit longer, but it's starting to look like I might pop it in here next. That's a crazy value, starting at $360 USD. That is the Redmi K20 Pro.